Well, good afternoon. Today is March 4th, 2024. You are in the Rowan County Commission meeting here the 1st of March. Only 9 months left till Christmas, so need to get your Christmas shopping started early. We are grateful that you're here. It's always good to see a room full of people, unless you're here to yell at us. But we are glad to see that you're here tonight. We do start our meetings with a couple of things every time. We're going to have a Pledge of Allegiance. We're also going to ask our Chaplain Taylor to come forward. Chaplain Taylor is going to provide for us what is called a solemnizing prayer. I take a minute to explain this every time so you understand what we're doing. Solemnizing prayer, by definition, means it's not for you. It's for us. It's for the commissioners. We ask a chaplain to come. The most important thing is to pray for wisdom as we make decisions that affect the folks of Rowan County. And we know that even between the 5 of us and our staff combined, wisdom always doesn't come to us naturally. So we pray for it and we ask for it. And so our chaplain's going to come. We're going to have a pledge after that. Commissioners, if you'll join me, we'll get started.
Commissioners, Lord, we come to you today and thank you for this day that you provided for us to be able to come to the county commissioners meeting, dear Lord. We do thank you for our county commissioners, dear Lord. We thank you for their work and time and effort they do and the job they've got. We thank you for the dedication they have. As we come to this meeting today, we ask you to give them the wisdom they need, Lord, to be able to make the right decisions, do the right thing today. For you bless them, strengthen them today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chaplain Taylor, thank you as always. Grateful that you join us every week. All right. You guys have any additions or deletions currently?
Yes.
Yes?
On board appointments, under Social Services Department, I have vacated the slot for county representative, and I would like to put Mike Caskey's name in there as a replacement.
All right.
The board has to.
Can we do that, clerk? Yeah. Can we do it now, or can we do it at the time of that item? We could do that then, couldn't we? Yeah. We'll address it then. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other additions or deletions? All right. Then do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And say all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. The consent agenda has not been amended, and so do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
All right. Do we have anyone for public comment?
Nope.
All right, no public comment. Yes.
Just a plug here for our land use planning effort that we're now underway. Don't know if the camera can get this, but for the month of March, we have a planning survey that's on the planning department webpage. It's about a 15 to 20 question survey that we encourage folks to take if they have time. There's a QR code that you can click on with your phone, or there's a survey link as well. So we just like to encourage folks to do it if they're watching at home or those here in attendance today. So appreciate that.
So Ed, you can do it with your smartphone?
Yes, ma'am, they sure can. Okay.
You didn't have to take that time, Ed. We wouldn't have counted it against you. All right, let's move on then. We'll move to the regular agenda. Item number 3 is a continuation of the legislative hearing ZTA 04-23 Motorsport Racing Complex. We are going to pull that item. First thing I want to do is we're going to close a public hearing. Okay, do we have a motion? I'll make
So
that
moved.
motion. A second? All
Second.
right, and we've still got some things that we're looking at on that. So I don't know if I need a second to do that. Well, to table it, I'll make a motion, we table that. All right, we have a second. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, then we'll move on to the next item, and that is consideration of incentive agreement for Red Rock. Scott, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask if you will tell us when you want to put this back on so that the
That's a,
public will know?
yeah, that's a great question. We'll add it to our next meeting, which would be the mid-meeting in March, okay?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners, for hearing this request today on behalf of Red Rock Developments. As the board is aware, back in 2022, you approved an incentive term for Red Rock Development for their proposed development of about 380 acres on Long Ferry Road. This property is now being marketed as Carlton Farms, and Red Rock's plans for the property include construction of up to 6 buildings totaling 2.6 million square feet. These will be done over 3 phases. So the incentive approved by the board back in 2022 consisted of a reimbursement to Red Rock for up to $4.2 million in public water, sewer, and road improvements. And since that time, county staff, the EDC, and Red Rock have been working on an official agreement to codify the terms for this reimbursement. So, and just some key points about this agreement that's in your packet. The project, which is comprised of the building, the property, equipment, and improvements, should have a minimum assessed tax value of $100 million. And both the county and Red Rock agree that this part, or the intent of this agreement, is to amend it to add third-party job-creating tenants. And the county would also only reimburse actual costs incurred by Red Rock. If it was $3 million, that's what the reimbursement would be. But it would be up to $4.2 million, again, in public infrastructure improvements. And then also there's some language in there about how the reimbursement would work. If payments are made in installments, the amount would be the lesser of the following: the actual costs, or there's a formula in here that basically does a pro rata share of the expenses. It's, the maximum value, 4.2 million, times the actual tax assessed value divided by the minimum, blah, blah, blah. But it's a formula. So basically, if they get, 20% done, they get 20% of the money. That's how it's supposed to work. And also, the county would pay no reimbursements after 5 years from the agreement's effective date. So a 5-year window for these terms. Also, Red Rock must provide evidence of substantial completion of the components of the project. And also, the county agrees to respond to permit requests from Red Rock within a reasonable period of time. You'll get inspectors out there within, I think, 24 hours. And also, once Red Rock has reached that $100 million threshold of taxable investment, the county agrees to consider incentives for future taxable investment. And these would be based on the current policy at that time, whatever that is. And also, Red Rock cannot assign this agreement to a third party without the written consent of the county, though it can assign it to a party it directly or indirectly controls, such as a subsidiary. And before I get too far into it, we've got Mr. Todd Ward here from Red Rock Developments. I think he wanted to say a few words as well. Do you want to come up?
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, first and foremost, I would really like to commend county staff for working with us, the county administrator, the county attorney, and of course the EDC to update the agreement based on current economic conditions. 2022 is a little different from what 2024 is. The original agreement, as Mr. Sheldon stated, was that we made an investment of $117 million on the phase 1 in order to receive the investment. With construction costs and things like that going up, the county did have a concern that we might be able to meet that threshold easier than what we could when we first made the agreement. So we went with the assessed value, and we thought that worked out well for us and for the county. in short, we think that we've come up with a good agreement here that very much works for the county and very much works for Red Rock, and it just goes to show why everybody loves this county so much. I really don't have anything to add to what Mr. Sheldon has presented. As usual, he's done a thorough job, and no need for me to keep rambling on, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Todd. It's been a few years, so we're glad we're at this point.
Me too.
We'll get something in the ground.
Ready to do it, sir.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
So I really don't have anything to add besides that, but just a request that the board considering adopting the attached incentive agreement for Red Rock and authorize the staff to execute the agreement.
All right. Any questions for Scott or Todd from the board? All right, then we'll open up the floor for a public hearing. If anyone would like to talk about this project, this will be a great time to do it. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, do we have a motion to approve incentive agreement between the county and Red Rock Development?
So moved.
All right, any further discussion? Probably not. We've been working on this a long time. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Thank you, Scott. EDC, thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. All right, next item, public hearing for road namings, Brothers Way and Thicket Lane. Who is, welcome. Yeah, good to see you.
Right. So I have two road naming requests for you today. The first one is for a drive that is off of Smith Road in Kannapolis. There was quite a few addressing sort of errors in this area that we're trying to get into compliance. And this was one particular one. There's actually a third house scheduled to be built, which would make this have to be named anyway. So in trying to be prudent, not make them change their addresses twice, we wanted to request per their petition that we could rename this Brothers Way. So it would serve two purposes. And then the second one, are you just going to do both of them together? Both public hearings?
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry.
you're asking, can you do both of them together?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
be fine.
All right, moving on. Unless anybody has any questions about the first one. The second one is actually off of Umberger Road in Mount Ola. It's currently has two residents on it, planning a third, trying to get a zoning permit, and so requirement is that the road gets named. All the property owners signed the petition and approved, along with 911 Thicket Lane. That's my two.
That's all?
That's it.
All right, any questions for staff? All right, we're going to have another public hearing. If there's anyone that would like to talk about these name changes, these road changes, we'd love to hear from you. We don't see any, so we'll close a public hearing. And commissioners, do we have a motion to approve the changes to Brothers Way and Thicket Lane
So
respectively?
moved.
All right. We got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, that went easily. Yeah, good. All right, Mr. Muir. Legislative hearing for ZTA 02-23 for the
Yes,
planning
sir.
board to serve as Board of Adjustment.
Yep. So 160D planning statutes are contained in there, allow for a planning board to serve as a board of adjustment. And we took a look around our surrounding jurisdictions and closely split. I think 6 of them, of our neighbors, do allow their planning board to serve as the board of adjustment. And 5 of them currently have a separate planning board and separate board of adjustment. So in 1998, from a little background or history, in 1998, the Board of Commissioners served as the Board of Adjustment. And as you probably know, they hear variances and appeals and requests for relief from the standards of the zoning ordinance or subdivision ordinance, or really the land use policies that are administered by the planning department. And a couple years after that, the duties were transferred to an appointed citizen board, and that's what we've been doing ever since. And it's not uncommon for the Board of Adjustment to not have business, not meet for many months. So when we do have a case, it's generally tough to try to get folks back in the manner or the method of gearing up to meet, approve minutes from months and months ago, things of that nature. And so what we felt as staff is that transitioning the duties to the planning board would do a couple things. The Board of Adjustment is required by statute to have at least 5 members. The planning board has 9 members, and so that gives us 5 members and 4 alternates that can be seated. We would use the same meeting date, the 4th Monday of the month, as the Board of Adjustment meetings, and that we feel that training for these quasi-judicial decisions will be a lot easier. We'll keep them in the realm of other plannings that we do with the planning board. One thing to note is that if they do serve as the planning board, when they transfer to Board of Adjustment, they have to reconvene. They can't just make those decisions in their recommendation section. So a lot's going on, but really there's only 2 minor adjustments that we've got to our text. The first is the planning ordinance. You'll see item 7 there. That would be an addition, is that the duties would be to receive and decide appeal and variance requests when functioning in a quasi-judicial capacity as the Board of Adjustment. And then within the zoning ordinance, the composition, we have included there that subject to appointment under the statutes, the planning board shall perform the duties and responsibilities of the Board of Adjustment. So the planning board heard this in June of last year, and so we deliberately delayed this coming to the commission because there were a couple pending cases for the Board of Adjustment, some of which materialized and some of which didn't. And so now we're going ahead and moving this item forward so that we can take care of this sooner rather than later. So anyway, so following the courtesy hearing, the planning board offered this statement of consistency, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have. Again, you would conduct a hearing, close the hearing, adopt the statement, and decide on the text amendment.
On page 290, it has this list of counties and municipalities where planning board serves as Board of Adjustment. Some of them in our own county, Faith, Rockwell. This won't change.
No, this
of
only,
that. They're
yeah,
still
no,
doing
sir,
their-
not the ones in Rowan County. It's only going to affect our county board. Yep, good question.
Any other questions for Ed?
I'll have one after the public hearing.
Okay. All right. We're going to open the public hearing. We've got some folks that have signed up, would like to share some thoughts. First is Catherine Setzer. Oh, you got to talk now. You're required. No, you don't. Steve from Timber Run. I'm sorry, Steve. All right, thanks. Owen Crater. Owen, Mooresville Road, Salisbury. They may have signed up for the wrong thing. All right, well, good. Well done, you all. Yeah, good job.
One comment in advance
Oh,
of,
let me close the public hearing.
Commissioner Caskey. We would recommend that this becomes effective April 1st, if it is adopted.
All right, yeah. No, I support this. I think it's a good idea, and we've talked about that before. I know several of us have served on the planning board in the past. This comes up from time to time, and we've had a lot of additional duties for them now. And I would think we could think of a way to compensate the board some way. I mean, I don't know what that would be. I mean, if it's buying them dinner when they have a meeting, or
I think
even
it could range, it could be a couple different things. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Board of Health maybe, a couple boards in the county, we looked at this in the past, do compensate members. Some in other counties get a stipend. But yeah, it could be a meal, it could be payment. I think it certainly can be done. We can look at those options real quickly and get back a recommendation to you.
yeah, I
if you
mean,
wanna do that.
we have budget coming up anyway, so, if we
Sure.
have some at budget, because I know sometimes from time to time you get, every once in a while, you get, used to be, I remember we'd have problems getting quorums and things back in the day. I don't know if we still have that problem, but I think it's good might be a good time to look at that since we're basically doubling their duties now.
It's a good idea, and I appreciate you suggesting that. I know the board would too.
All right, any other questions? All right, then let me offer up a statement of consistency. DTA 02-23 is reasonable, appropriate, and necessary to meet the development needs of Rowan County not previously envisioned by the current zoning ordinance or land use plans. Statutory allowance for having planning board perform the duties of a board of adjustment is provided in North Carolina General Statute 160D-302B. Rowan County is exercising its right to do so. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, then do we have a motion to approve ZTA 02-23?
So moved.
Any other discussion?
Effective April 1.
Effective April 1. All right. Have a motion, a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thanks. Shane? Do you have some folks that need to be sworn in?
I do.
Okay. So if you are going to be testifying in SUP-01-24, please come forward with the clerk, be sworn in. While you're doing that, I'll entertain the rest of you with a speech I'm required by law to read. The hearing for consideration of SUP-01-24 is now in session and will focus on an application submitted by Timothy and Donna Poole for a residential storage facility on tax parcel 646A-084 located at 915 Driftwood Trail. If you feel that any member of the board may have a conflict of interest in hearing the case, please address the board now prior to any testimony or information being presented. When the board enters into deliberations to decide the case, no further testimony may be presented. The board will render one of the following three decisions. 1, approve the permit as requested or with additional conditions. 2, continue the request, or 3, deny the request. All parties who plan to testify in this case may come forward and be sworn in. Those who testify must state their name and address at the podium for the benefit of the board's clerk. All material presented must be given to the clerk and will become part of the record, and this board can only accept sworn testimony. No hearsay evidence is admissible. Shane, welcome.
Shane Stewart, Rowan County Planning Office, 402 North Main Street, Salisbury. As the chairman read in the opening statement, this subject for the permit here is the land at 915 Driftwood Trail, parcel 646A-084. If you look at the vicinity map, it does cut off the southern portion. So if you head out Bringle Ferry towards the lake, turn left on Clark Road and take it out, you have Driftwood Trail and Riverwalk that kind of run parallel, and you continue out Driftwood to the corner of Riverview Circle, and that is the site of the property we're going to speak about. Here's a aerial from about 2 years ago. The total acreage of the tract is about 1 3/4 acre. And of course, corner lot, Riverview Circle, Driftwood Trail, both of which are publicly maintained roads. So back January 20th of 23, Planning staff issued a zoning permit for what we call a residential storage facility. It's a fancy term, basically, is you have a accessory structure on your property with no house. So by default, that becomes the principal structure. It's just for the same thing you'd store in at your house, Christmas decorations, lawnmower equipment, vehicles, etc. This is not for a business. It was not permitted for a business. Hard to tell on here after it's been scanned a couple times, but that says storage of building for personal use. And again, that was January 20th of last year. A little bit of delay before they obtained their building permit. Don't look at this date here. It's actually 6/9 of 23. So on June 9th of 23, the property owners applied for their building permit. Same use, storage building for personal use. And this structure just has power, does not have plumbing, does not have mechanical. And thereafter, I believe in November, mid to late November, staff received a complaint from a citizen that indicated that there was non-compliance at this site. Staff visited the site and also looked through our permits and noticed an error on our zoning permit. The building was slightly larger than what staff has the ability to permit. And also, it appeared that the structure was into the side street setback. So if you look at the image here, this is from November 20th, and you have a block-sided building and stick frame above. The only thing lacking at that time was really, you had the house wrap on it, so it would have been vinyl siding, had the fascia trim covering for it, and then the doors itself. So for all intents and purposes, the building structure was there and finished, except for these trim features. And there's another view from the other end of Riverview looking back toward Driftwood Trail. So probably one of the more difficult calls I ever had to make in my nearly 20 years at the county is telling these folks that we messed up at the staff level. We incorrectly calculated that building size. So with that, we had to send them a stop work order, don't proceed with the building, need to get this figured out. And also we had to revoke the zoning permit, which therefore revokes the right to have that structure. And what we cited in there are two options. Thankfully, there is an option where they can have this building of this size, this process here before you. And then the setback variance is an application to the Board of Adjustment. So that's what the letter entails. And I will say that the Poole family has been unbelievably understanding. Again, difficult for staff to have to reach out, I can't imagine on their part, but they've been very kind through the whole process. One of the first actions after we met and we had the phone call and the letter that they received was they hired a surveyor to go out and survey the property. If you look at the image here, you see the structure identified with the surrounding property lines, and building was maybe an inch or two larger than the original. So you can look in the staff report, and there's two different maths that we laid out from GIS, the square footage calculation, then with the survey, and that percentage there slightly different. If you zoom in on this structure, you'll see it was originally permitted 72 by 36, but it had the 0.2 and 0.3 for the full dimensions. And it was slightly into the setback. On the northern end, it's 25 feet, and that says 23.9, so 1.1 foot into the side street setback and 9.95 feet into the setback at this location here. That is for the Board of Adjustment to handle, the setback. We are exclusively talking about the size. And when you look at the ordinance, we have pretty much the same standard since 2002. Take you back in time, 22 years ago, we had a lot of folks along, ironically, High Rock Lake. You had smaller lots on the lakeside. You didn't have all the room for your house, your well and septic, and you need your building for storing your toys and things that don't fit on that lot. So at Anchor Downs was the first site that came into play. And some property owners there had petitioned for a text amendment to create this storage opportunity for that instance. And this is pretty much the same language that was applicable back then, with the exception of 3. We modified this slightly. Because after 30 requests, the board petition or received from 02 to 18, all of which were approved, the board said, you know what, we don't maybe want to see all these. So can we have a process where administratively staff can approve a lot of these? So what came out of that was an amendment where if you look at 3, it says the structure does not exceed 3% of the lot up to 3,000 square feet. Meaning if you had the biggest lot in the county, you can only have 3,000 square foot for personal use storage. 3% obviously would allow that, but 3% is what staff can approve. So that permit that originally came in would have been somewhere around 2,250 square feet, but it was 300 and some change larger. So that's where this board comes into play. As long as it doesn't exceed 3,000 square feet, this board can approve the permit request. So that's step 1. At the bottom, I've got highlighted here the verbiage that indicates as such, because the above part is an administrative process. Only for the exceeding 3% is where it comes to this board. So let's go out to the site, a more recent picture. It looks very similar, but we have siding on. There is one door put up. See the fascia trim, but it's pretty much the same setup. They did ask to finish those things because you had weathering that could damage that improvement. So felt like a reasonable allowance there. So this is looking down or north along Riverview, driftwood trails to your back. This is the front side, and then this is the side street heading down Riverview Circle, and it loops around. On the back side of the structure, looking back towards, you see the stop sign there at Driftwood. Here to the left, it's in one of those coves that feed into, or the lower side of the lot. And from Driftwood Trail, looking to the structure through the trees, the Poole family is interested in putting a driveway here connecting Driftwood Trail to that building. That's why the address was modified. You'll notice on the zoning permit earlier, it was scribbled out and handwritten. That's why, because they wanted to come off Driftwood Trail. A few other images around the site. This is on the back side of the Poole lot. And then off to the left is the end of Riverview Circle, and the lake's back here. And looking down Riverview towards Driftwood, the structure to the left. And then across, this is directly across the road is a small storage building there adjacent. So on our process here, the land use plan doesn't have direct, much like a lot of land uses, direct recommendations on a topic like this, but it is for low to medium residential uses, so that it's conforming in that respect. We have evaluation criteria that the owners, the applicant has turned in some responses there too that we use. As far as notices, we sent the required minimum notice to folks within 100 feet, but also included the rest of the folks along Riverview Circle that honestly didn't want to leave out a half dozen people. So we included everybody here in this colored area. The notice on the upper right posted a sign on the property on the 21st. Received a few calls, and I'm not sure how many of those folks are here this afternoon, but we do have example findings for the board's consideration. And once we go through the findings, or obviously the hearing first, any findings, you have the option approve, deny, table, and add any conditions. The very bottom, an obvious condition too that we want to place on this is subject to the variance process with the Board of Adjustment. I did not mention, but of our 30 This is the 33rd special use permit for storage facilities in 22 years. About a third of them are on High Rock Lake. So, a little factoid. Any questions of the board?
Can you go back to that prior screen? It was the one after your map. No, back the other way. Sorry. Yep. 6 separate motions for
That's if necessary. Typically, we do not do that.
Okay.
That's only if the board feels necessary.
Okay. All right. You know, I got to say, in today's time, it's not often you have folks get up and say, hey, we messed up. So I appreciate it. Yeah. All right. So we're going to open this up to public hearing. We've got some folks who have signed up. So first off is Andy Abramson. Andy, welcome. Oh,
Yes, there it is. There.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. My name's Andy Abramson. I'm the applicant on behalf of property owners Timothy and Donna Poole, who are here today. They are very appreciative of the way staff has carried itself since this situation emerged. Obviously, it's been a difficult time for everybody. The permit request, as Shane advised, is to allow for a 36 by 72 accessory structure. As he mentioned, in this area, there are many of them that have been permitted under a special use permit. The need for it, as explained, is because the request exceeds the 3% limitation that's included in the ordinance 2156. The Pools, as Shane stated, introduced or presented this request to the planning office, and it was approved for the 36 by 72 structure. Also, although we're not discussing the setback issue, that too was approved. That too is part of the permit application, or excuse me, the permit that was provided as far as the location. But focusing on the square footage, had the Pools known that they needed a special use permit, they certainly would have provided or applied for one, because that was the size of the structure that they had wanted. They used this for personal equipment, backhoes, pontoon boats, just personal property. It's strictly for personal use. There's no commercial use intended here. Never has been, and it's not their desire. They're retired folks, and they just want to have a nice place to put their belongings. I would, to the extent necessary, I would like to offer into evidence all of the items that have been presented so far through the PowerPoint. I'd like those to be included into the record. After the permit was issued in January, once the weather improved and they got their building permit, they had poured a 36 by 72 concrete slab. They then went on to have the construction move forward, and you can see from the photos that were provided, or that Shane showed, it's a very handsome structure. It's fine craftsmanship, block, frame, building, and certainly fits in nicely with the area. There are some review of the criteria that Shane presented under the 2159. There are those 6 items for the board to consider when it moves forward to the finding of facts. And the first one relates to the adequacy of transportation to the site. This property is on a public road. It's a personal use structure. There's no third parties that will be coming to the property, no commercial use. So there's not going to be any impact or increase in traffic or transportation to the site. The next question is whether or not it would significantly detract from the character of the surrounding area. And as Shane noted, there have been numerous special use permits for this exact type of building around High Rock Lake. And we have just a few photos. I would show, Shane showed a couple photographs. Here's some others of accessory structures in the area. And you even have container structures that are being used for storage by some folks. There, also in the area, there's piles of materials in people's property, and this is not what the Pooles want. They want to have a nice, attractive place to store their items. They don't want them sitting out. And in fact, if you went back and looked at the GIS photo from a few years ago, you would actually see that some of the Poole's personal belongings and equipment and vehicles are out on that property. And so one of the goals here is to enclose those, screen those, and really enhance the area. The third item for consideration to reach your findings of fact is whether or not hazardous safety conditions will result. I think clearly not with an accessory structure like this. This is not to be used to store hazardous substances. It's just to keep their personal belongings, the pontoon boat and equipment, yard equipment, and tractors in. And this is customary in this residential rural area to have this type of building. Criteria number 4, whether or not it will create unnecessary or generate significant noise, odor, or glare. We're just talking about an accessory structure, so that will not result. Excessive traffic or parking problems. Again, this is a personal, private use accessory structure. That's not going to result in any increase in traffic. And then lastly, the 6th criteria is whether or not it would create any significant visual impacts to passerbys or adjacent property owners. We're talking about a deviation from the permitted use by about 3.5 feet on either side of the structure. This is negligible at best, and I think it would be you'd be hard pressed to find that this 3.5 foot difference creates a significant visual impact from what would be otherwise permitted. In regards to the 3 findings, I feel like those 6 criteria that I have just spoke on sufficiently address 2, so I don't want to repeat myself on any of that. However, one of the items, the required findings, pertains to the conclusion that the development would not substantially injure adjoining property values. And for that, I have an affidavit from Tom Bost, who's been a real estate developer for over 25 years, is a licensed real estate broker, renders broker opinions of value on routine basis. And Mr. Bost went out to assess the site and examine the area and produce an affidavit, which I'd like to offer into evidence, and I can share with the commission. Of the items included in his affidavit, I would just note that he stated during his site visit, there are numerous other storage buildings that were observed, including 2 very large storage buildings directly across from the subject property, and noted the shipping containers that were being used for storage. Based on his experience as a real estate broker and developer, it's his opinion that the storage building on the subject property will have no adverse economic impact on the surrounding real estate. The Pooles are hopeful that this special use permit will be approved. They feel that it stands on its own 2 feet and merits and warrants the approval of the special use permit. It's an enhancement to the area, not something that detracts from the area. And we would respectfully request that the commission approve the permit.
All right.
I'll reserve rebuttal.
Yeah, sure. Any questions for council? All right, Thank you, Andy. All right, we also have signed up Donna and Timothy. If y'all would like to speak. No?
I think for the moment,
Yeah, that's
they'll
fine. We
waive
can
their
come
right
back.
to speak.
Yeah, we
There
can come
is,
back.
I know one neighbor who's present, Rick Johnson, a neighbor of theirs who would like to speak.
Yeah. Rick? Okay.
To be putting up such a nice building, and then what I see surrounding it, are you going to be satisfied with your neighbors?
We still plan on being a good neighbor to.
Oh, I know, it's very obvious.
House on the next road, and because of the problem with septic areas, we couldn't even put a small building to put a lawnmower in. And that's why we had to buy that lot to put a building in with a pontoon boat, and we got a skid steer with a backhoe. And I don't want to have junk sitting out in my yard and make it look bad in the neighborhood, so we wanted to keep it inside.
Well, I applaud you for that.
I can't hear what she said.
He doesn't hear well, I'm sorry.
I can't
That's
hear,
all
I'm
right.
sorry.
Anything else, sir?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick Johnson. We swear him in?
Did we check on any outstanding warrants?
After I figured out which hand was my left hand.
Yeah,
Right. I'm Rick Johnson, and I'm on 256 Riverview Circle. So I'm 2 houses down from the property. And I drive in and out 20 times a day, it seems like. And I have no trouble with the building where it's at. And as you've seen in the pictures, it does look a lot more presentable than some of the other things we got to look at. So, because that container's sitting in my front yard. Not my front yard, but the lot right in front of my house. So I get to see that storage container all the time. So Tim's building looks really good.
Good.
That's it.
Thank you, Rick. Billy Woody. Mr. Woody, welcome. Sir.
Just a couple of things I'm concerned about. A few years ago, when that property was up for sale, I inquired about it with Wallace Realty. I purchased the property because I was wanting to do basically the same thing, look for a place to put some storage. So I contacted the planning board by phone, told the lady the address, told her what my plans were. I was wanting to build more down-to-earth type residential garage, which would be, common size, I think, would be under 1,000 square foot. But the planning board the lady told me that I absolutely could not, that I had to build a house, that I could not have a single structure on that property without the house. And I said, well, I don't want to build a house because I live at 255 Norwood Drive. She said, well, I can't give you a permit to put a building there unless you build a house. And she said, we don't have any control of the HOA, but you might want to also look at your restrictions on the development. So I did so. I went back and I pulled my deeds, I pulled my information, and the restrictions are there in the HOA that there's not a single building, garage of any nature to be built on the property at Driftwood Cove. So I called Mr. Wallace and told him my findings, so I didn't go forward with trying to purchase the property. Well, we're out in the last November walking, and I noticed this building being built. And I'm like, man, somebody's gonna build one heck of a house, because this, to me, is a commercial building. When I look at the difference between a commercial and a residential building, look at the garage doors. And when I call around to our surrounding counties to find out the difference in a commercial building permit compared to a residential permit, it's all about size. The common residential building is under 1,000 square feet. And the common doors for a residential garage is 7 to 8 foot or 8 to 9 foot. This building has 12 foot, I've not measured them, I've not went on his property, but it looks to have 12-foot wide by 14-foot tall garage doors, which is considered a commercial style door. The setbacks is a concern where it's sitting. It's on the corner. So I got to looking at it. I went down there several times and looked at it. Then I contacted Ed. I went to his office. And the Mr. Mackey or Mr. Mickey, the code enforcement gentleman, come out and talked to me, and he acknowledged me that the permit was issued by Mr. Poole to build a residential storage building. And I went over to my same concern that I tried to do the same thing and I was denied. And we talked about that, and then he talked about the setbacks. And I said, well, it's so close to the road. And he said, well, it's supposed to be 35 foot off the road and then 50 foot off of that. So it's supposed to set back 85 feet off of each corner. So, you know, I've been there 20 plus years. My concern is property value. What's it going to do later on down the road? What's it going to change into? Is it going to stay a storage building? That's a mighty big building for a residential storage. It's huge inside. I think for me, it's an eyesore to the development. And like I said, the restrictions in our code, in Driftwood Cove, is no single structure without a home, which I understand y'all don't have any authority of. But what is considered a residential building to a commercial building? What does the board consider? What would be a commercial building? If this is not considered a commercial building, then I would like to ask, what is a commercial building? How big of a building would it have to be to qualify as a commercial building? You know, it's a huge building. Sitting on the corner, and it's right there on the road, as y'all could see on the pictures. So I do have a lot of concern. I plan to, when I leave here, I plan to let my kids have that home. And my concern is the tax value of that property. If we let everybody that makes mistakes, I try to follow the law. I called the planning board. I was told I couldn't do it. I looked at my deed. I looked at the restrictions on my deed. I called Mr. Wallace and told him, I'm not going to be able to purchase the property because I've been told this, and I found out from the restrictions that it's not doable. But then you have people that come up and overlook the laws that's been put in place to protect people that own property in the same development. And then all they got to do is come up here and say, I'm sorry, I want a special permit. That shouldn't be the case. The special permits, in my view, should be if it was a mistake. If there was a mistake on where it was built. If it was a contractor that built it. My understanding that Mr. Poole built it. So he had a knowledge to build it, and he had plenty of land. Why couldn't we build it back like the requirement said? You know, is it because we know we can come to the board and say, hey, I want to ask for forgiveness, and I know I'm going to get it? So I asked the board to take in consideration if everything was followed. Absolutely, we know it wasn't. Why do we have these laws for permits? Why do we have all this process we have to go through when we want to build something if we're not going to follow up and make sure that it's under the requirements that's listed? Like I told Mr. Ed there in his office, we got a problem here when the zoning board, when the permit office issues a permit, nobody follows up. Nobody checks to see if the person, it's kind of like on I trust you to buy something, you know, put money in the jar, take the goods. You come get a permit, and nobody seems to follow up to make sure the permit's being used for what we applied for it for. When the inspector goes down there to inspect the building, they should be, in my view, they should be in touch with the permit office to know what's supposed to be built there and what's the reason for the permit. If we did that, we wouldn't have these mistakes. They would be caught from the inspection office. where the footings was poured. If the man that went down there to inspect this building, if he would have saw where the footings were, they were so close to the road, it was obvious they wasn't set back 85 feet. Then he could have contacted the planning board and said, hey, I couldn't inspect it because the footings is not in the right place. So there's a lot of ifs here, but the problem is the building's built, Now, what we're going to use it for? I hear we're going to use it for personal use. Well, that's always the start, I think it could be turned into a lot of things later on after the permit's issued. So I asked you to look at it. We put trust in our commissioners. I've been getting mail all week because, tomorrow's good vote day. So what do? When we go vote for somebody, we trust who we vote for. We trust that that person is going to be honest and that they're going to do the best job they can if we put them back, if we elect them in office. And that's what I'm asking y'all to do is look at this and see where was the mistakes made, Was the mistake only made in Ed's office, or was the mistake made by Mr. Poole? He can read a ruler, he built a building. He knew how far that setback was. He went and got the permits. So I just ask for you to really think about it and make a good decision.
All right, thank you very much. Council, I guess you're speaking for them? Well, before that, can I ask Shane some questions? Shane, can we? There's the issue of size. Does it matter how large the building is, or does it only matter the usage?
Both. As long as it's under 3, this board can approve it. We're not talking about the use. This board, our staff, nor building inspections through the permits and what's been asked for would allow commercial use. Commercial versus residential, there's no correlation between square footage and use. It's, what are you using it for? You can run a business out of a 8 by 12 storage building for DMV. That's the minimum of 96 square foot for car sales. Maybe you'd see one of those show up one day, but there's no relationship there. And again, maybe one of your questions, the Pooles didn't make the error. We did. We gave them a permit with the wrong information on it. They'd have no reason to think that we were wrong, nor would building inspections. The permit was issued in error.
And so the size of the doors don't matter either?
No, sir.
Okay. And could you explain, this is the first time I've heard about an 85-foot setback. Is that a requirement?
I think what they're trying to do is relate it back to the center of the road to determine right-of-way, which honestly, that's hard to do. Absent a survey, you're guessing the road's built in the center of the right-of-way. So that relationship would have said center road to edge of right-of-way is X plus the setback.
25 or 50.
Right.
So I am confused, though. A house I built in 2000, I subbed it out myself, and I just recall talking to the bank, and the bank said, well, go ahead and put your foundation in and then call for a foundation survey. And I said, well, that sounds backwards to me. Why don't I have them survey it first and tell me where to put it? No, you put it in, then have the surveyor see if you put it in the right spot. I said, boy, that doesn't sound right. But I did it and was fine. So, I've got the same question that Mr. Woody asked, which is, how did, if the setback requirement, which we're not going to deal with here, right? We're just talking about the building size. The setbacks weren't right, then how did the foundation survey get approved?
The setbacks say there's 10 feet, then they built it that met 10-foot setbacks. They were just wrong.
Oh, okay. So the permit had the wrong setback on it.
In other words, the document, the Poole said, what's the setback? And our document said 10 feet. So it's not his fault.
Okay. And we'll, the questions I have were for him. Now, I've had some calls too, and the big concern that I've gotten from calls is usage. Folks just want to be assured that this is not going to be a commercial use. So could you, I know you addressed that already, but you may have to address it again.
From day one, it has always exclusively been the intent of the pools that this structure be used for personal use. They have no intent to use it as a commercial structure. As I mentioned, they're both in retirement, and it's just to house their personal belongings. It's my understanding they would need a new permit if they were to use it for some commercial use. And so by the terms of the permit that we're requesting, they wouldn't be allowed to engage in any sort of commercial use. The size of the doors, I used to have a pontoon boat. I know what it's like trying to pull that into a tight spot. And that's why they have these large doors, because he has a pontoon boat that's on a trailer, and he wanted to provide for a generous, leeway on either side to get it in. I don't know, how do you disprove a negative? They don't want to use it for commercial purposes. It's strictly for residential use. I just would like to underscore the fact that, yes, the ordinances are our rules, they are our laws, and our rules and laws provide for special use permits under certain circumstances when the criteria are met and when this commission can make the appropriate findings of fact, and I feel that that is the case here. The Pooles have spent a significant portion of their retirement savings on this structure, and it is something that we feel enhances the neighborhood, and I think the pictures speak to that clearly. And I think that without question, this permit request should be granted.
Thanks.
Mr. and Mrs. Poole, you come up. I've got a really short question for you. So thinking of a pontoon boat, it's got to like take up most of the space in there. What other toys are you planning to put in there and store?
I have a backhoe with a skid steer with a backhoe attachment.
Really?
I've got my tractor and all, a 4-foot tiller and the implements that go with it.
Okay.
It's 40 years of collecting junk. And I didn't want buckets and forks and stuff in the yard and making it look like a junkyard in front of everybody's property.
And with the other doors, we don't have to move the boat every time to get something
Get
else out.
something else out.
Have fun.
All right, Shane, I got one more question for the county. Do y'all know anything about Mr. Woody's predicament? I mean, if I were him, I'd be ticked. Someone tells me, no, I can't do that. Months or years later, someone else is doing it. Do we have any idea?
I have no idea. I mean, we have several folks. We don't have a large department, but this has been a rule for quite a number of years. I would be stunned if someone say you can't do anything. Even before 18, there was a process, and it allows you to do X. Always personal use, never for anything else. Back then, I believe it was 3 lots. Were we buying one of them and it was too large, the math didn't work, or did they not want to do the process? I have no idea, but I can't dispute what he said because I didn't talk to him. But I think that's one of those things with staff. It's been a standard since 2002, and we deal with a whole lot of rules, and every once in a while we might get one wrong, but I just can't respond to that directly. I don't know. But from talking with staff, I don't know anybody that shared that incorrectly in his context. But I don't know all the details. One variable changes and the answer changes.
Craig, do you have something?
I don't have any questions. I just want to make a comment when it's time.
All right, that's all the speakers we have, so, we'll close public comment. Commissioners, any further questions or comments, Craig?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Woody, I'd like to apologize to you on behalf of the county. I know this is an aggravation for you. You and I have spoken outside of this chambers about it. And as a matter of fact, I'm the one that told you to go see Ed Muir so we could see what we could work out. I'm sorry you missed the purchase of the land. I know it's inconvenient for you and it's a disappointment. But I will have to say, people make mistakes and you have to move on. And I know I've known you personally for a long time, and I know that you'll get over this. And at least they built a nice looking building. I mean, you know, I know you expressed some concern about where they're going to start working on cars or this kind of stuff, and they've assured us that they're not. And now that Shane and Ed have both said that if they should start some type of business, they'd have to get a permit. They would have to come through here, and we're just not going to do that. So I'm sorry for your disappointment on the lot, and I do appreciate you coming today to address the issues. And like I say, these guys at the planning department, they work like dogs. I'm not kidding you. And sometimes things happen, and but that doesn't make it right. But you're a good enough person. I know that you've addressed the issue with us, and I'd just like to be able to see them use their facility. Sure.
I feel like a lot of this is who issues the permit. It comes down to the office that makes the mistakes. It really alerts me that we have a planning board and a zoning board that can take this small 1 acre land and make so many mistakes. So what I've just heard was we made a mistake on the setback. We made a mistake on giving a permit for 10 foot off the line when it's supposed to be 35 foot off the center of the road and 50 foot off the line. I just heard that they give them the wrong permit for a square footage of a building that's supposed to be 300 and some square feet smaller. You know, if I was sitting in your seat, I would be looking at Mr. Ed there and say, hey, what's going on with your department? How many times has this happened? How many times have we had things like this to go on? I mean, it's a real big concern because it don't only affect me. Thankfully, I'm one road up the road. And I am concerned about the restrictions in the development. I'm not done with that. But I'm very concerned about the planning board and the zoning board. They don't work together. Apparently, it's obvious that these companies do not work together. They issue permits, and then somebody goes out and inspects. Nobody knows what the permit's for. There's a big problem here with the planning board.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
You were sitting here, what would you have us do?
I would look into how many times this has happened.
No, I'm specifically with this case. Would you have us tear the building down?
Well, see, that's the problem. Should the building be tore down? It should be. Because it was built illegally. It was built wrongfully. But is it the right thing to do? No, the man spent a lot of money on it. It's built. So that's where that term, and I'm sure, Greg, you've heard this before, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And after talking to people in this county, it sounds like this commission hears that a lot. It's better to ask for forgiveness than it is permission. Because if I went up there and told Ed there, hey, I'm gonna build me a storage building, I was told no from his department. But what if I'd have sent my wife up there and reworded it? Said, hey, you go up there and let's reword this. I want to get me a storage building built. And after I get it built, I can just go up there and ask for forgiveness and get a special permit because we've already built it. So you can play both sides of the tracks. That's why we need to make sure, I feel, the planning board and the inspection department should hold hands. It'll avoid a lot of this.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for
Thank
your time.
Jane, was there a survey done on this property?
There was after the structure was built.
For the structure was built? And where did the center of the road turn out to be?
There's the pavement area. You can see it's not quite in the center of the right of way.
So the road's a little bit closer to the one side of the property than the other.
Yeah, and it's farther away over here, so, we don't, it's
Well,
go in a number of different directions, but we don't require everybody to get a survey.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, let me just share a little story. When my parents got ready to sell part of their farm, we had to make a correction in the road, short little road. And when the town put the road in, they didn't put it in the right place. So we had to buy 4 acres from our neighbor and pay the assessment fee for all of that work, and turned out to be about $10,000. So where the center of the road is does make a great amount of difference, and that can go either way.
Anything else? We've closed the public hearing. Any other questions? Go ahead, Jim.
No, I'd just like to say to Mr. Woody, we're sorry, Mr. Woody. It sounds like we did add to this. We could have that building torn down or require that something happen. But the minute that happens, I'm sure we would hear from Mr. Abrams and would cost the county probably whatever it is, $100,000 for the cost of that building. So this is more than just pointing fingers. We can't do much because we have to take responsibility of this. And like I said, it would end up costing the county a lot more if we didn't make adjustments on this. But we try to run our departments the best we can. I don't think in the 10 years I've been here that anything like this has happened, especially out of this department, permitting department. My father used to say anybody that didn't make a mistake wasn't doing anything. Sometimes it just happens. And so we appreciate these folks and adding to the community. It seems like the neighbors accept the size of the building there and that it's not something too large. Having built a couple of buildings on my property, every time I build one, I think I haven't built it big enough. I don't have doors big enough to get my toys in and out of. So I understand 14-foot doors. If I could go back and jack my building up, I'd put them on mine. But things just happen, and these, we're sorry that this happened to you, Billy, but we have to go forward from here.
I agree. Apologies from the county, Mr. Woody. I'd be disappointed if I was you. So I get it. I mean, having said that and knowing that folks are human, and the jobs that we have, we got a police officer, retired farmer, insurance guy, contractor. We don't know everything. It's why we specifically pray at the beginning of our meetings for wisdom, because the knowledge part is harder. It's the wisdom, I think. And so to step in, my point with that is we have to rely on so many people as lay people, as elected officials. We rely on folks who are trained in this. And I got to say, one of the bright spots that we deal with every meeting is our planning department, and we trust them explicitly. Does that mean they don't make mistakes? I'm with Jim. There could be some others out there, but this is the first case we've had since December 1st of 2014 that we've seen this, and it appears to me this is painful for these guys to have to admit this. So we are sorry about this. So we got to move ahead, though. You guys are two good names, two good families, and so we don't want to heap tragedy on top of a mistake. So we want to move forward from this point. Whatever you do with the subdivision, we don't have any part of that. I don't know how you deal with your subdivision bylaws. I don't know. I live across from you guys in Anchor Downs, and I'd like to put a building up. I understand I'm in a pie-shaped lot that's 30 feet at the street, so I got nowhere to. I'm trying to figure out now how to put something on the side of my house to put a mower in, because I don't have the room I used to have. So we have some of these garage structures in our neighborhood. I think Shane brought up that Anchor Downs was one of those that was happening in. So I kind of understand everything that's happening. So we'll move ahead. Jim, do you want to, we've got 3 findings to approve. So if you'll do each of those, then we'll vote on each of them.
You want these two facts together?
Mhm.
Make this in the form of a motion that the development of the property in accordance with the proposed conditions will not materially endanger the public health or safety. Fact 1, the proposed structure is subject to compliance with applicable building code standards. Fact 2, zoning and building permits issued for the structure only allow residential storage. No commercial business operations are allowed.
That's a motion. Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Motion number 2, that the development of the property in accordance with the proposed conditions will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the development is a public or that the development is a public necessity. I've got a fact, excuse me. Licensed real estate broker John Thomas Ball submitted a sworn affidavit stating that, in his opinion, the storage building will have no adverse economic impact or surrounding real estate property values.
Craig, second. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Number 3, that, and this is in the form of a motion also, that the location and character of the development in accordance with the proposed conditions will be in general harmony with the area in which it is located and in general conformity with any adopted county plans. Fact 1, according to the staff report, since 2002, 32 special use permits have been approved for residential storage facilities, a third of which are near High Rock Lake. Fact number 2 is that this request is 372 square feet over the administrative allowance, but under the 3,000 square foot maximum for a special use permit. Fact 3, that a variety of building facades are used in this area, including vinyl, the type material used on the owner's building.
All right, that's a motion. Do we have a second? Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have a motion then to approve SUP 01-24. And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. Yes.
Before we move on, Shane, were there a couple of things that should be finished on the building that you were talking about. One of them sticks in my head as fascia.
I would just probably add the one condition subject to the variance request.
That's a good point. Commissioner Green, will you amend your agenda to include that our approval will be subject to the variance request by um, Board of Adjustment?
Absolutely.
All right, and second? Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All right, we have some board appointments. I don't think there's any. I'm just going to go through these and make them in the form of one motion. Central Line of Workforce Development.
Excuse me, Mr. Commissioner, weren't we going to add Mike Caskey to one?
Yeah, we can do that. And in fact, before I do this, I've had this thing sitting in front of me. I keep overlooking it. Christopher Leonard, would you stand? Is Christopher still here? Yeah, Christopher. So I want y'all to recognize, you go by Chris or Christopher? Chris. So Chris is part of the management here in Rowan County, and we have these folks come and visit with us on occasion. Our county manager, kind of the story I tell is we hire folks, put them in position of leadership, and we hope they're good leaders, right? We kind of find out later if they are or aren't. So our county manager decided, well, let's make the odds a little better. So he is putting them through some pretty rigorous leadership training. It's a long program. We've been doing this a couple years. Chris is part of that group this year. Chris, what department are you in? Sheriff's Department. Well, thank you. Well, welcome, and how about you guys giving him a round of applause? Thank you for being here. Sorry I didn't recognize you earlier. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah, we'll add it. So, so we've got Central Line Workforce Development Board. Kimberly Bartleson applied for private sector seat, Central Iowa Economic Development District. That is myself and Rod Kreider for reappointment. Dangerous Dog Board, Jenny Salyers applied for an at-large seat. Enochville Volunteer Fire Department Commissioner Board, Mitchell Wayne Rousey applied for the county seat on Enochville Volunteer Fire Department Board. Liberty Volunteer Fire Department Commissioner Board, Rodney Airy applied for that seat. Therapeutic Recreation Board, Carla Gray applied for that seat. Do we have a motion to approve all those?
Mr. Chairman, before we vote on that, on the very first board appointment up here for Kimberly. Wilson,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a little bit confused. If her term starts February 1st, why does it end on June the 30th?
This a
So the seat itself would end, and she would have to be reappointed at the end of that term. She's filling an incomplete
Okay, it
term.
didn't say that, so I want to make sure. Well, voted on it, it was correct.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Then for Planning Board, we had two applications. I'd like to nominate Tyler is it Wythorn? Weethorn, I'm sorry, for that Planning Board seat. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Then we have another motion to add a seat, and so Commissioner Klusman, would you like to make a nomination for DSS Board seat?
Well, first, I think I'm going to resign.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I offer my resignation from the Department of Social Services Board effective immediately. And since there needs to be a representative from this commission on that board at all times, I would offer up Mike Caskey as someone who could take my place.
All right, do we have she makes a motion on the resignation. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
She makes a motion to replace her service with Mike Caskey. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Carla Gray.
I did.
Carla Gray.
Did you do the therapeutic board? Oh, did you? Okay.
Yep, I did. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.